wasn't just a domestic abuse of surveillance. It was a global effort to essentially take President Trump down. And that's exactly what this was.
Now pay attention to this point that George Papadopoulos is about to make. It's an obvious one, but it's not one I had actually really thought about, to be quite honest, but it makes complete sense. It's something that I guess we all kind of knew, but maybe you thought about it. I never thought about it in these terms. And it's the fact that because Barry truly is a Marxist, it was very easy for him, essentially, to get other Marxist, socialist, European allies to cooperate in these clandestine spying of his opponents, essentially. You know, it's, I guess, socialists of a feather flock together.
We have to remember in 2016, most governments in Europe were socialists. These countries were basically colluding with the Obama administration to either spy actively on the Trump campaign or to set various traps. And that's why the genesis of this investigation, in many ways, it's going to be easier to understand because most of it emanated from Europe, but also it might be a little difficult because many of these foreign governments don't want to be embarrassed by the president right now.
Wow. And for those that are maybe new to this channel or new to this truth movement and this train of thought of actually accepting that there is a Marxist globalist movement to try to bring us all of Western society, the European Union, Latin America, the United States, Canada, toward a more centralized globalist, overpowering one government for the world type of thing. For those who thought that that was just theories, here's another example. We have people at the highest levels of government with Marxist thought colluding together to exercise power over the freedom that we in the West have to elect the officials that we want. Another example that globalism is real and unfortunately is still alive and well.
Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. She sits on the Senate Judiciary, Armed Services, and Commerce Committee. Senator, thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Listen closely to what Senator Blackburn is about to say. She obviously has her finger on the pulse of what's going on among her fellow colleagues in the Senate, as well in the lower house, the lower chamber, the House of Representatives, that they are nervous about what's coming down the pike with Inspector General Michael Harwit's report of the DOJ, also the actions that are probably going to be taken by Attorney General Bill Barr and his bulldog John Durham, because this whole frenzy that they've been pushing about Russian collusion, meddling in our elections, and foreign operatives trying to meddle in what we the people want is about to come home to roost, and they don't like where it's going to come home to.
The Democrats are getting mighty antsy about what might be found in that report and about what Attorney General Barr could possibly be looking at, because they are the ones who did some outsourcing and working with the Russians and foreign nationals and trying to get information, the dossier paying for that through the Clinton campaign.
President Trump agrees wholeheartedly, as we can see from this ABC News interview. He is also going to implicate the Democrats, and beautifully he's going to be tough on George and kind of tie George back into the actual guilty parties.
There was no crime. The crime was committed by the Democrats. It was committed by your friend Hillary Clinton. The crime was committed by them.
I love it. I love it. President Trump. Man, I love President Trump. Yeah, the Democrats were involved. And a major one of them is your friend Hillary. I love it. I love it. He doesn't let George off the hook, as George he really looks desperate in this interview, trying to trap the president. But of course, the president prevails. Now I want to go back to George Papadopoulos, who is letting us know more about what is actually going on, who's being unmasked, if you will. The news that is hitting the European press that our American corporate media is not reporting.
There are a lot of front page headlines going on in Italy right now that most American reporters, maybe willfully or not, looking into, where they're basically examining some of these key characters involved in my story. For example, Joseph Mifsud, who was this infamous professor who one day unsolicited told me that the Russians had Hillary Clinton's emails, and then all of a sudden there was this cascading effect where I had members of the CIA, the DIA, Australians, and the British basically spying on me in London, and you know, it's not being reported here, and the old narrative is about to be upended.
What is a narrative that's about to be upended and changed and corrected, if you will? Well, let me just, George Papadopoulos will tell you what's actually being reported boldly by the Italian press. But let me just remind you what the Mueller report supposedly says. They say that Joseph Mifsud was a Russian asset, and his contact with George Papadopoulos, therefore, was a proper predicate and was reason why they were looking into the Trump campaign for Russian collusion because of his contact with Papadopoulos. But as we're finding out, thanks to Italian press, that's not the case. That's not the case at all.
The most interesting and disturbing part of the new story that's going to be coming out over the next months, I believe. In Italy right now, they're openly reporting that Joseph Mifsud was an Italian agent who was essentially spying on me and working me in many ways, and possibly being run by the CIA. You're starting to see a lot of reports, even in the New York Times, about CIA involvement in spying on Americans, and I think that's what it is.
Yeah, Mifsud was not a Russian asset. He was working for our own CIA, or working with our own CIA, who, if we're correct, and George is correct, I mean, just according to our civil liberties, they shouldn't be spying on us.
Hillary's State Department server was openly being discussed all over the world of being potentially hacked.
Another part of the false narrative that the MSM has been pushing is that the altruistic, patriotic people within the FBI suspected that then candidate Trump may be colluding, and that is why this is happening. But once again, as I've been pointing out and reporting on this channel, due to the things that have been declassified with Newland and with Weiner, is that it was Hillary and her State Department, also with Kerry and his State Department, where a lot of this actually started. It's all coming back to Hillary. It's all coming back to the State Department. It's all coming back to Barry.
There are people who say the whole thing started at the State Department. I only have a few seconds left. Do you believe that?
Absolutely. I think all these foreign governments were being prodded by the State Department to essentially weaponize their intel agencies against us. That's why you saw many Trump associates who were abroad being spied on. And I believe hopefully the president did bring this up during his last visit to the UK, because the UK was heavily involved in this, and it should be called out to the light right now.
Yesterday, George Papadopoulos tweeted out, 2 weeks ago, I exposed Italy's role in Spygate. Barry is heading to Italy today to meet with the former Italian Prime Minister who weaponized his intel assets against us. Keep focused, America. The real headlines are now coming out. And what happened in D.C. today? Well, it turns out that the Deputy Prime Minister of Italy, Matteo Salvini, also known as Europe's Trump because he's a populist with a hard stance on immigration, he is currently in D.C. meeting with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and also Vice President Mike Pence. George Papadopoulos yesterday informed us about Barry coming or going over to Italy. He also tweeted this out yesterday. I guarantee you Matteo Salvini from Italy is not in D.C. to talk about immigration with Vice President Pence tomorrow, which is today. Spygate is the hot topic. Its impact is reverberating throughout the world. All right, and then we have this tweet from Giulio Occhionero. I've covered him before. This is a gentleman that was, him and his sister were in legal trouble in Italy for supposedly Trojan horse type of hacking, and they say that they were actually framed. But anyway, he's been reporting a lot about what's going on with Spygate in Italy, and he tweeted, as a matter of fact, he tweeted today, Obama and Renzi, and that's the former Prime Minister of Italy, meet again in Italy, but this time in secretly, apparently. Italian mainstream media, who once would celebrate this, is now worried it could lead to more Spygate conjectures. Agreeing on a common version of facts for Barr and Durham? Very interesting. So he's saying that they're having this meeting. It's secret, and it could be that they are trying to maybe coordinate their stories for when they are questioned by Attorney General Bill Barr and John Durham. Man, is this story getting deep. Julio goes and also has this other source that has more information. I'm going to look into it. I believe I looked at it and it was in Italian, so I've got some more legwork to do. But as I get more information, I will definitely report it to you folks here, my BCP Patriot family.
We talked about Russia before, but we haven't talked about Robert Mueller's evidence on obstruction of justice.
Now I want to bring this full circle for you and come back to the George Stephanopoulos interview of our duly elected President Donald John Trump. I just showed you from recent news what's being reported in Italian press, what George Papadopoulos is telling us about that, and what Senator Blackburn is saying, that this is an international spy effort coordinated by our Central Intelligence, by the State Department, all under Barry's watchful eye, and the Democrats. There really was collusion to meddle in our 2016 elections. It was Democrats and their deep state operatives working with foreign agents. Yet George Stephanopoulos is still shilling for the left and trying to beat this dead horse called the Mueller reports.
The Attorney General said you didn't commit obstruction of justice. Robert Mueller said he's not reaching a decision, could not exonerate you. And he laid out all that evidence. More than 1,000 formal federal prosecutors.
Oh, but they're all politicians. Hey, George, look, I know more about prosecutors than you'll ever know. They're politicians. I could get you 5,000 that would also say that there's nothing. You know, I saw the names, and these are all, many of them are Trump haters. George, I could get you thousands of prosecutors that say this is the most unfair. You take a man like Alan Dershowitz, who's a very brilliant guy. He thinks this is one of the worst things ever to happen to our country because I've been very unfairly treated. Even a question like that's unfair.
The question
but they're taking people, and you're taking people, and I could get you thousands
Mr.
of
President, there's nothing unfair about the question.
Whatever.
President Trump answered the question, letting us know that these people are political hacks, that the prosecutors are political. You don't believe me? James Comey telling Loretta Lynch that she shouldn't prosecute Hillary Clinton after outlining all of her crimes. So President Trump is right. George Stephanopoulos is wrong.
The crime was committed by Comey and all of these people. Now, we're going to find out because I guess there's an investigation. I stay away from it, but I guess there's an investigation going on.
And let me end with this. George Stephanopoulos, he wants to bring up one of the key prosecutors that's saying that there's something here. Listen to who he quotes and tell me with a straight face that George Stephanopoulos is not a shill for the Democrat Party and that he's a true journalist. Try and tell me that with a straight face. I dare you.
I want them to say.
One of those prosecutors today, Kamala Harris, running for president, said
she's running for president. She's doing horribly. She's way down in the polls.
She says she would have
no choice.
I must say
Pocahontas is really cleaning her clock. And I heard she made that statement. And you know what? Who wouldn't? Probably if I were running in her position, I'd make the same statement.
Seriously.